During World War II, one Soviet military commander played a crucial role in some of the most important victories against Nazi Germany. His name was Georgy Zhukov, and he became one of the most powerful and respected generals of the Soviet Union. Zhukov led Soviet forces in several major battles that helped turn the tide of the war on the Eastern Front. His leadership was especially important during battles such as Stalingrad, Kursk, and the final assault on Berlin. At a time when Nazi Germany had invaded deep into Soviet territory, Zhukov helped organize the defenses that eventually pushed German forces back. Through careful planning, strong leadership, and massive military operations, Zhukov played a key role in defeating Germany's armies in Eastern Europe. His actions during the war would eventually make him one of the most famous military commanders in modern history. In June 1941, Nazi Germany launched one of the largest military invasions in history. The operation, known as Operation Barbarossa, sent millions of German soldiers across the borders of the Soviet Union. German forces advanced rapidly during the first months of the invasion, capturing large territories and pushing deep into Soviet land. Many Soviet cities were threatened as the German army moved toward key targets such as Leningrad, Moscow, and Stalingrad. During this dangerous period, Soviet leaders needed experienced commanders who could organize the defense of the country. Georgy Zhukov quickly became one of the most important generals responsible for planning Soviet counterattacks and defensive strategies against the invading German army. One of Zhukov's most important early victories came during the Battle of Moscow in 1941. As German forces advanced toward the Soviet capital, the situation became extremely dangerous for the Soviet Union. If Moscow fell, the consequences for the war could have been devastating. Zhukov was placed in charge of organizing the defense of the city and preparing Soviet forces for a counterattack. Under his command, Soviet troops built defensive positions around Moscow and prepared to resist the German advance. When winter arrived, Soviet forces launched a powerful counteroffensive that pushed German troops away from the city. This victory marked one of the first major defeats for Nazi Germany during the war and proved that the German army could be stopped. By 1942, Nazi Germany launched a massive offensive toward the Soviet city of Stalingrad, located along the Volga River. The city quickly became one of the most important battlefields of World War II. German forces attempted to capture the city after months of heavy bombing and street fighting. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to ruins as soldiers from both sides fought for control of factories, buildings, and narrow streets. Georgy Zhukov played an important role in planning the Soviet strategy that would eventually trap the German army inside the city. In late 1942, Soviet forces launched a massive counterattack known as Operation Uranus, which surrounded the German Sixth Army. The encircled German forces were unable to escape, and after months of brutal fighting, the German army in Stalingrad was forced to surrender. After the defeat at Stalingrad, Nazi Germany attempted to regain control of the Eastern Front by launching a new offensive in 1943. The target was a large bulge in the front line near the city of Kursk. This battle would become the largest tank battle in history. Thousands of tanks, aircraft, and artillery pieces were used by both sides during the fighting. Soviet commanders, including Georgy Zhukov, had received intelligence about the German attack and used this information to prepare strong defensive positions. When the German offensive began, Soviet forces were ready. Massive defensive lines filled with mines, trenches, and artillery slowed the German advance. Eventually, Soviet forces launched powerful counterattacks that pushed German forces back once again. After the victories at Stalingrad and Kursk, the momentum of the war on the Eastern Front shifted strongly in favor of the Soviet Union. Soviet armies began launching large-scale offensives that pushed German forces westward across Eastern Europe. Cities and territories that had been captured earlier in the war were gradually liberated as Soviet troops advanced. Under the leadership of commanders like Georgy Zhukov, the Red Army became stronger and more experienced. Massive Soviet offensives forced German armies into a long retreat toward Germany itself. By 1944, Soviet forces were advancing across Eastern Europe and moving closer to the borders of Nazi Germany. By early 1945, Soviet forces had pushed German armies back across Eastern Europe and were approaching the borders of Germany itself. The Red Army had grown into one of the most powerful military forces of the war. Soviet commanders began preparing for the final and decisive battle that would bring the war in Europe to an end. The Battle of Berlin. Georgy Zhukov was given command of the Soviet forces responsible for attacking the German capital from the east. Millions of soldiers, supported by thousands of tanks and artillery pieces, prepared for the final assault on the city. The attack began in April 1945 as Soviet armies advanced toward Berlin, determined to defeat Nazi Germany once and for all. The Battle of Berlin quickly became one of the largest and most intense battles of the entire war in Europe. Soviet forces surrounded the city and launched powerful attacks from multiple directions. German defenders fought desperately to protect their capital, but Soviet armies continued pushing deeper into the city. Street fighting broke out across Berlin as tanks, artillery, and infantry units fought block by block through destroyed buildings and ruined streets. After days of intense combat, Soviet troops finally reached the center of the city and surrounded key government buildings. As the battle came to an end, Nazi Germany's leadership collapsed and the German army could no longer continue the fight. In May 1945, Nazi Germany officially surrendered, bringing the war in Europe to an end. The fall of Berlin marked the final defeat of Adolf Hitler's regime. Georgy Zhukov played a major role in the final victory over Nazi Germany. As one of the most important Soviet commanders of the war, he had helped lead several major victories that pushed German forces back across Europe. From the defense of Moscow to the battles of Stalingrad, Kursk, and finally Berlin, Zhukov's leadership had a powerful impact on the outcome of World War II. Today, he is remembered as one of the most successful military commanders of the war and one of the key figures responsible for defeating Nazi Germany.